Hello and welcome back. This week we are looking at the 6th to the 13th of November, and we'll be exploring the astrology with you and seeing what's ahead for your sign. I'm Sonia from Celestia Astrology, and with me I've got my very good friend Shawna. Shawna, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Shawna with Smart Astro. You can find me at smartastro.com, Instagram, X, all the places, same handle.
And thank you so much, Shawna, for stepping in again and helping us with November. It's been short notice for Shawna.
It's always good to talk with you.
Thank you. And here we have the astrology of the month, and we're going to be looking from the 6th to the 13th. So we can see that the first week was like super busy. There down to the 4th, it's like there's a whole lot of a whole lot of shifts going on, some quite big shifts we had last week. And this week, I don't know, it feels a little bit like a calm, like we've gone from choppy seas into a calmer place. On the 9th, we've got Venus squaring Neptune, which is retrograde. So even just the fact that it's retrograde means that maybe we're looking at stuff that's come up before. It's not new stuff we're having to deal with. Then Venus will enter Capricorn, which is Saturn's sign. And then on the 12th of November, we've got Mercury squaring Saturn. So again, Saturn's retrograde in Pisces. So we've got that energy. I think of like Back to the Future, almost, of where we were and revisiting it.
Yeah, I love that it's very Venusian right now. I think you hit the nail on the head with the choppy seas, and now we're coming into maybe the calm after the storm. I mean, at least for a moment, anyway, we get a little respite.
Yeah, we do know that the weeks ahead have some more big shifts again. So it's not going to last long, but we need to enjoy it while it's here, don't we?
Yeah. Venus likes things to be cohesive and come together. So hopefully this next week will be nice.
Which will be amazing as well with voting and everything. But maybe that's just the calm point where everybody knows what they've got to do. The voting in the US is just go and vote. And I like that Mercury's got something to say there with the 12th. But yeah, it's like that waiting period. I was talking last night in one of our study groups, and I said it's almost like you're on a roller coaster and you're just on that up bit, and you know what's going to come with all those twists and turns. But at the moment, you're strapped in. There's no getting out, and the ride up is quite nice. You can see a nice view. You're looking around.
At a good steady pace, also.
Yeah, it starts to not be too scary if you don't think about what's ahead. Once you get over that top, you can just enjoy that ride up, can't you?
Okay. Yeah, enjoy the view. Feel the nice, slow, steady build for the exciting adventure to come. I couldn't help but notice that Venus is squaring Neptune, and Neptune is sitting right at the exaltation degree in Pisces. Yeah, Venus is exalted in Pisces, and so I think there's a lot of favor shown to Neptune here. Even though it's a square and it's a point of tension, I think there's bound to be, maybe it's that good kind of tension, a little bit of friction, but it's exciting and it's anticipatory. And Venus is in Sag right now, looking for adventures, looking for new experiences. And then with Neptune and Pisces, you kind of get this very mystical and ethereal vibe. There's the square and there's the point of maybe contention, but it feels like it's a spicy flirtation before a fling or something like that,
Yeah, I like that. It's like the fun part.
The fun part. That build, it's you're pouring a glass of water and you pour it too high and you get that little tense bubble over the top. It's that point, before the spill. That made it sound ominous.
We're meaning it to sound nice. So here we have, this will be on the 9th. We've got Neptune squaring Venus. And as Shawna's just pointed out, Neptune is at Venus's exaltation degree. So that's a really nice signature between the two of them, I feel. Venus in Sagittarius, Neptune in Pisces, but retrograde. And this is the degree that Neptune will retrograde back to next year. We've got a little while yet, but it'll move into Aries on the 30th of March in 2025. And then it will return back to this place. So things that happen from now on in with the Neptunian and Pisces flavour. But it does feel like these connections where they're significant would have something to say when Neptune returns there, maybe.
It's like you pointed out, Neptune is a much longer transit. So with the outer, I kind of think of them a little bit more generational, long-term changes, things like that, or not necessarily changes, but influence maybe. I mentioned kind of a spicy fling before, but maybe it's more like you've reconnected with your long-term partner. You've found a new thing that you both like to do. And, with Sag, it's making me think it's, adding some romanticism to something, or maybe you both started a class that's very like art-based, or like you both decide to take a pottery class or a painting class or something, that's very hands-on, explorative, something new and different. Could even end up having like a spiritual aspect to it in some sense.
Yeah, absolutely. I made notes of the archetypes, and it's like a sacred kind of love. Sort of the Holy Virgin Mary comes to mind, and cosmic beauty. I had a quote from Plato that I've used before, but I do love it. It's, if anything besides absolute beauty is beautiful, it is so simply because it partakes of absolute beauty. So it just gives me that stop and smell the roses kind of vibe of like, just appreciate that beauty around us, that it's all around us in the mundane, that it doesn't have to be that big. That's what the divine and the sacred gives us, is this experience on earth. I saw something the other day on Twitter. I think, is it William Shatner that went into space and said he was actually quite disappointed because he thought he'd have all these inspirations and revelations, but the revelation that actually came to him is that space is cold, dark and scary, and like not empty because there's all the stars and everything there, but life is on Earth, where there's earth and greenery and flowing water and all these things that sustain our lives. And that was the revelation that he took away from it. So it's like seeing the beauty in all of that really feels like it's coming through. I've got some dates here for their cycle, because this is actually the closing square. And the closing square is often where we release. We've come to learn what this journey, this transit of these two planets is all about for us. We begin thinking about releasing what we've outgrown now, that things need to change with a square. There's some tension and we're being asked to change something. And there's some sort of adaptation, or maybe it is in our ideals I was thinking about. But anyway, the dates, they met on the 3rd of April 2024 at 28 degrees of Pisces, and they had their opening square at 29 degrees. Venus was in Gemini, Neptune was in Pisces, and that was on the 17th of June 2024. And then the opposition was at 28th of August at 29 degrees. So that was the anaretic degree that we spoke of, and that was Pisces to Virgo. So now Venus has travelled round and something's being released before they meet again and start a new cycle together. So it's along those themes. But the reason why I'm sharing the dates, we just spoke about whether to keep including these, is because those dates might trigger some memories of things along these kind of themes happening for you. And that's how you'll know if this cycle is relevant to you, if it's hitting your chart. So I hope that helps you, but we're always open to feedback on what is and isn't useful. The degrees are helpful for people who know their charts, and you can always find your chart on AstroSeek or the Charney app we recommend for your phones. I do have a link of it in my notes, and I am an affiliate for full transparency, but that's only if you upgrade. But if you just want to see your own chart, that won't cost you anything. It's a free app, and you'll be able to see your chart, and it will give you all your degrees. So then you can see we've got Neptune there at 27 degrees, squaring Venus at 27. And if you've got, arrow isn't cooperating with Venus there at 27 degrees. So if you have any of your planets around those 27 degrees of mutable signs, so we're looking there at Sagittarius, Pisces, Gemini, and Virgo, you're the people that are most likely to be affected. Or if you have the mutable signs on your rising sign, for example, or on any of your angles, your MC, in a mutable sign. And I thought it was interesting because we do call the mutable signs in Hellenistic astrology, we call them double-bodied. And I thought that gives me more insight into how how they actually operate. Because if you think the Pisces is about the two fishes and Gemini is about the two twins, and it is about that duality and those two sides of something. And that can also help us give some insight into what's going on here. So we've got a connection here between two planets, both in these mutable signs, and there is some changeability, some duality coming up.
Loving that. I'm just thinking about Venus in Sagittarius and how it can be like playful and explorative, and your arrow is being very cheeky right now and flipping forward.
It really is. Yeah. We had this conversation about my arrow. Oh, look, for a moment it pointed at the right place. But I've got no control over what direction it's pointing.
And boundaryless.
Yeah, there is a lack of boundaries with both of those signs. With Sagittarius, it's about like the endless vistas, isn't it? You hit in like the Orphic hymns and everything. Like there's a quest for something beautiful and ideal. Hi, bird.
Hello, buddy. Boundaryless.
Well, there is a boundaryness, and the same with Pisces. It's the endless ocean, and the depths of the ocean that we haven't discovered and plumbed. And when those two come together,
right,
what are they asking of us? I wonder.
The thing with so much water right now is water needs the container in order to have shape, to create the boundary. What's the container, and how is Venus going to create the container for Neptune? What kind of container is it going to be? Is it going to be something new and completely different? Or are they're done testing all of the new and different and perhaps usable or unusable ideas, and now they're going back to something tried and true in this last quarter.
Yeah, this last quarter is like really the refinement, what are you going to keep from what you've learned, and what are you going to leave behind? And is that something old, or is it something new that you tried on for a little while, but it doesn't work for you? Sometimes we do this. We try things out and they work for a short while, but they're not for us in the long term. And sometimes we outgrow things that have served us well for many, many years. And that can be uncomfortable, that letting go. While we have the square, that's the nature of Mars. He does the cutting away and the severing and the taking away things that we have, that it is time for us to leave behind. And that should be coming into your consciousness now. If this aspect is impacting your chart, then, and those dates maybe have meant something to you with these kind of themes about Sagittarius Venus put down wants to learn about love and relationships, beauty, creativity. Maybe it's a time to review those beliefs. Like in Sagittarius, you're in the sign of the mage. It's Jupiter at his wise best, and the quest of philosophy and beliefs and everything. So maybe it's what we're looking at, and bringing the beauty and the harmony to those. Maybe your beliefs have been causing friction in your life, and maybe you've held them out of stubbornness, or just because it's opposite to somebody else or something. And maybe it is time to review what really works. But also Neptune can create those delusions, and it can create like a fog. But then when a Neptune transit comes to its end, we're often in a better place. When that fog lifts, you can see very clearly. So it's like, although you haven't known what's going on during the journey, it does offer us that empowerment and that development through sitting with that confusion for a little while. I made a note as well that Pisces 3, the decan that Neptune is travelling through at the moment, or retrograding back through, is known as Effort by Kira Ryberg and Bowl of Blood from Austin Coppock. And he doesn't shy away from the dark places, but also a place of deep sacrifice. It's the 10 of Cups in the Tarot, and it's Mars ruled. The decan is Mars ruled.
Yeah.
In both systems. So that is a lot of Mars. And of course, Mars, by this time, has just moved into Leo, as we discussed last week. So it's no longer got the sensitive Cancer water trine, is breaking up now. We've kind of gone through all those emotions, and now it's time to take a little bit of action.
Yeah, the sword is in the fire now, isn't it? The Mars has a trine now. It's a whole sign trine, so it's very wide, but it has a trine now to Venus. And so it's also a verse then, because of the Venus-Neptune square. It's a verse to Neptune. So it makes you wonder what things are being severed that you're not quite aware of yet, that you can't see. What are the plans in the works that are going to cut the fat, with Venus. Venus loves those. Well, Venus is in a Jupiter ruled sign. So, really embracing maybe the indulgence and things. And is Mars going to continue that, or say, hey, it's time to calm down a little bit and redirect?
Yeah, and of course, Venus is just moving out of that opposition that she had to Jupiter. So that was bringing us nice things, Jupiter there being the ruler of Pisces. And then the exaltation ruler being Venus. So it's nice that Neptune can see both of those rulers. It's got a whole sign square to Jupiter and an exact degree base square to Venus. So kind of raises up Neptune's significations, really, having that access. Was there anything else you wanted to add?
With Neptune, sometimes you do have to be careful about like escapism or, illusory behavior or, illusions and delusions, right? Illusions and delusions with Neptune, creating that fog around things, especially with it being a square and holding that tension.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so we'll move on. And on the 11th of November, we have Venus moving into Capricorn. And she's going to be here for 4 weeks until the 7th of December 24. And here she's peregrine, so she's not got specific dignity in Capricorn, but it's an earthy place. So she's moved out of that fiery place that she was in Sagittarius, and Earth is very practical. Capricorn's thought of as like the world builder. It's going to create something. It's also a cardinal sign, which is initiatory. It's going to get things started and get things going. But at the same time, it's yin, which is like a feminine receptive energy. And we don't mean gender here when we say feminine or masculine. We're talking about how it works in the world. And when something's receptive, it's going to experience things more internally, maybe, and process them more reflectively, rather than immediately taking action or wanting to respond very quickly, or action being the answer, even, which it was in other signs. So it's co-present with Pluto, which is going to be the last time she's experiencing that. As we know, Pluto is going to shortly move into Aquarius. And it also has a sextile with the ruler of Capricorn, Saturn in Pisces. So that's quite nice that Venus will be making those aspects, having that sight of her ruler. It's like Saturn is her host while she's in Capricorn, and she's got a clear access line to her host. They can communicate well. And with the sextile being of the nature of Venus, that really helps Venus be supported, brings opportunities, we think, sort of sextiles. It's like nothing's going to land in your lap, but the opportunities might show up. Venus is in the superior position here. So we've got Venus here, and she's superior to Saturn as she moves towards the station. Like Saturn's practically stationary there and still, but as she moves through Capricorn, she'll be meeting with Saturn. And that means the whole time that she's able to stamp her significations onto Saturn, rather than Saturn's melancholy and heaviness and obstacles being brought to Venus. So it's like a lightening of Saturn in some sense, or a beautifying, a glow up. And it's also interesting that she won't actually oppose Mars, because in Capricorn the opposite side is Cancer, and Mars has now gone into Leo. But by the time Mars in Leo gets to the degree that it retrogrades at, I think it's 6, and then travels back, Venus would have moved out. So she won't have that Mars opposition to worry about, or at least not yet, not for the time being, not for this whole transit. And she'll square the South Node in Libra, and she's trining Uranus in Taurus, which is her own sign. So we've got the South Node here, which means also the North Node here. And it also means that shortly she'll be at the bending of the nodes, which is that midpoint when she reaches 4 degrees, unless the nodes have moved by there. But at some point during her transit through Capricorn, she'll be at that bending, which can sometimes be a crisis point. And if we bear in mind that she's then in the sextile to Saturn, I feel like that's kind of showing us how the crisis is resolved. That's where she looks to as well to her rulers. Like Jupiter is the second ruler, so she could also look to Jupiter, but she has no sight of Jupiter right now, and she has no sight of Mars, who is the exaltation ruler. That's why I was speaking about where Mars is and whether she'll oppose him or not. So when she trines Uranus, that's like a trine is a nice aspect of ease, and it's the nature of Jupiter, and it brings like opportunities, beauty and grace, harmony, and kind of an optimism as well. And that's just nice as she's applying to Pluto, and he's finishing up his business, like making that last pack up, that last trip around the house. If you think he's been there 3 times now, he's retrograded back in and gone direct again before he moves into Aquarius for good. It's kind of like leaving some flowers before you leave, that kind of thing, like for the next occupant. Like if you're moving house and you've cleaned everything and everything looks great, and you just leave some nice, beautiful touches for the next occupant. And that's a nice way to see Pluto's last weeks in Capricorn, I feel.
Yeah, Venus is, the sextile to Saturn, like you mentioned before. They've got kind of a mutual reception going. Right, with Pisces being it's the exaltation of Venus, so it's a different kind of mutual reception, but it's there. They've got a relationship and they're working together. Venus moving from Sag into Capricorn, it's gonna maybe take that fling that we talked about with the Neptune Venus square, and all of a sudden it's a serious thing, where you weren't expecting it, but it's surprise, it's there. And maybe that plays into the Venus-Uranus trine a little bit too. But I love what you said about, if you're moving house and you leave a little gift for the new occupants, that's such a sweet thought. And, Venus with kind of social graces and wanting to bring people together. And I really love that concept. It's really a nice touch. Venus and Capricorn too can maybe be prioritizing some relationships or stability in those relationships. And it doesn't have to be just romantic. It can be, you're solidifying a business partnership, or, you're revamping an old friendship even. I like that actually old friendship concept around Saturn. Saturn is old. Saturn is longevity, and Saturn is, withstanding the tests of time kind of thing. So maybe you'll see a peek in some of those things. A friend you haven't seen in a long time just pops up on your radar again. You go to lunch or whatever.
That's really nice. Yeah, especially with Saturn retrograde there, where it's like looking at things from the past. Then we move on to the 12th of November, and we have Mercury in Sagittarius, and it's squaring Saturn retrograding Pisces, and Saturn's still at the 12 degrees. So it's this Sagittarian Pisces, and it just feels like we've had a lot of mutable energy this week. I think it's like a mutable sandwich, with Venus moving into Capricorn being Earth and Cardinal, but yet this mutable energy is like bookmarking our week with the changeability. And Saturn will turn direct on the 15th at 12 degrees. So we don't have much longer, a couple of days from the 12th. But it's at that degree that it's stationing at. So there's a lot of intensity of its significations. I think Chris Brennan was talking this week about when Saturn first stationed in Pisces, and that was the time when the submarine imploded. Is that the right word? Underwater. And it feels like all the revelations that have come out since then about how the company was run and the decisions that were made regarding safety and everything have been very much about Saturn, because Saturn asks us to put the work in. It's not about the shortcuts. It's not about opportunity landing in your lap. It's about you working hard at something. And then it's really bringing to light those significations of Saturn in Pisces, bringing to light something where somebody had taken shortcuts and hadn't put the work in and done everything by the book and properly, and showing us what can happen, what the potential is. And we had everybody thinking for days, worrying that those people were trapped and unable to breathe, or losing oxygen and not having the supplies that they needed. And it was a very tense time waiting to hear, could they find them? There was searches, wasn't there, a rescue search for them. So with Saturn stationing again, they don't know if like the retrograde station is as intense as the very first station in Pisces. I'm hoping not so, because we've had some terrible storms that water has caused a lot of damage, and we've had the bridge that was rammed into us.
There was a barge that ran into it, right?
Yeah.
On the East Coast?
Yeah. But that was such a shock for everybody as well, wasn't it?
Well, I feel like we've had a bunch this year.
Yeah. Yeah.
The Francis Scott Key Bridge in Baltimore. Is that the one you're saying?
Baltimore. That's it. Yeah. Yeah. I knew it was a B.
Yeah.
It's that Baltimore Bridge accident. And like Shawna's just said, there's been a few of them. Which is
The amount of water in the last year has just been wild.
It really has, hasn't it? It's really drawing our attention to water issues, whether it's the lack of it or the excess of it. You know, either way, it's not good for human life or animal life to sustain. And then, like, I don't know exactly what was the outcome with the Baltimore Bridge, but I think there were questions about what was happening on that barge before that accident and whether those have been resolved. And maybe we'll see some of those resolutions around the time of the station and Saturn starting to turn direct. Maybe information will come out, particularly with the square to Mercury, that Mercury has a way of sharing this information with us. He's free from under the beam, so he's free to enact all of his significations. And it's nice to see Mercury has a mutual reception here with Jupiter still, and Jupiter is Saturn's ruler. So there's that nice connection. Jupiter and Saturn are in a square, and then Mercury has this opposition which it's separating from, but also this mutual reception where they're working towards the same aims. So that feels like maybe they're helping in that sense, Saturn, but maybe there's a Saturnian message that has to be shared first by Mercury with this square.
Yeah, I mean, Saturn, Mercury, it can also represent like some delays, right? Or some frustration in communication. And so this being the closing square, right, of this transit, yeah, I think maybe we might learn some more things about all of the water issues that we've had, since they had their conjunction. Yeah, like we said before, the amount of water this year has been just really wild. And you mentioned either too much or too little, and neither one is appropriate. We have to have that balance in order to sustain and to maintain what we consider normal life. And I wonder how much is going to come up, not just around, the barge accidents, which there were surprisingly several, and, the exploration into the submarine that imploded. And then on a personal level, how much are you realizing what habits you have are maybe detrimental, or how can you put some more structure into place that will help you keep focus around your everyday things.
Yeah With Mercury representing like our intellectual processes, and Saturn representing what blocks we might be facing, Pisces being that dreamy place. It's kind of bringing all of those together, isn't it? Yeah, I've got the dates here. Their conjunction was at 9 degrees of Pisces, and that was on the 28th of February. You're right, this is the closing square. They had their opening square, Mercury in Gemini and Saturn in Pisces, on the 12th of June at 19 degrees. And then their opposition was on the 18th of September, and that was from Virgo, Mercury in Virgo to Pisces. I've put a note here that Mercury's still in the psychopomp phase for the moment until it reaches its greatest elongation and then starts its retrograde in Sagittarius, which is imminent. But I don't know, it just has a weight, this sense of him in that phase and meeting the Lord of Time, like that heaviness to it, and the psychopomp duties having the heaviness to it. We've got a favourite picture, and it shows the weight of that responsibility on Mercury, really. Having the psychopomp has to make decisions and has to help people at a very difficult time, or help souls at a difficult time of transition as well. So maybe there is some sort of transitional boundary that you need help getting across, and they're both planets that help with those boundaries, like setting them, maintaining them, but also which ones we need to keep and which ones we need to just loosen up a little bit and be flexible on. We need to, when we set boundaries, sometimes we stick with them forever, but our lives change and circumstances change. So sometimes it's time to review those boundaries. And this might be a good time to do that. Mercury bringing the mental focus and discipline careful force in speech, brevity, understatement, common sense and realism I've written, like in this phase. And the shadow side of that being the worry and the pessimism, the narrow or limited perception of things that can get out of hand, especially in Pisces, where a problem can be so escalated. It can feel endless, and out of control, where it's actually good to check in with other people, really, I suppose, and make sure that you're perceiving it correctly and not leaning into that endless nature of Saturn. And that worry, like there's always that scene of the worries in the night, the endless nights where our worries go into that spiral. We want to try and avoid that. And what I really like, the archetype, is like the measured language, the concise language, like the haiku, which is just a really short poem, but really direct and meaningful. Every word matters. And also dry, depreciating comedy we might see here with Mercury, Saturn. And I was thinking of things like The Simpsons or The Office, where you kind of have to get it, don't you, to get the humor. It's not straightforward. Here's a joke, it's funny. It's like there's underlying themes going on. Something a little bit more.
A very dry wit.
So it'd be nice to see some of that show up, bring some lightness to it. What might be a challenging week for many, particularly in the US with the voting, but I think with the astrology looking calm, I think this week looks calm, but what will come from it and flow after might be different. For now, maybe everybody's sort of waiting, going up that roller coaster.
Yeah, hopefully everyone's having the bright ideas and not the self-doubt,
Yeah.
and the heavy Saturnine, self-doubt and mental blocks. Saturn in Pisces tends to get a little melancholic, and but Mercury is in Sagittarius right now, and so being exiled, it could be a little heavy. It could be maybe a little avoidant. It could be, a little stifling even, or that question in your head: is it good enough? Am I good enough? So trying to keep it light, light the spark. Don't listen to the negative self-talk.
Yeah, that's where sort of checking in with others can help with that. Get the facts around the situation as well as the thoughts. Thoughts are not facts. That's one of my mindfulness mantras when I first studied mindfulness and was introduced. It made so much sense to me. I was like, yeah, I hadn't really taken that on board as a concept before, but thoughts are a different thing to facts. And it's really important to know the difference. Saturn's bringing those facts and Mercury's bringing the thoughts. Then you want to get, again, with everything, you want to get that balance right of it, don't you?
Yes, definitely.
So that concludes our week. And next week we'll be back on Wednesday looking at the 13th to the 20th and all the astrology. Much busier week coming up then, but we'll be looking at the astrology of that week. And I've been Sonia from Celestia Astrology, and thank you, Shawna, for joining me. Can you remind people where to find you?
Yep, smartastro.com. Same handle, smartastro on Instagram, X, Blue Sky, all the places.
All the places.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, you're so welcome. I really appreciate you joining me. Thank you. And if you've enjoyed this, please remember to like and subscribe because it really makes the difference. And your comments are very welcome. Your comments or questions are also very welcome. So thank you so much.